Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. Another football Sunday found me planted firmly on the couch to cheer my lackluster hometown team, clinging desperately to slim playoff hopes. Silver lining of their miserable season meant dirt cheap tickets when I scored seats through a buddy still clinging loyally to faded glory days. I posted a selfie flashing our passes online with joking bravado of the ass-kicking, surely awaiting my boys in blue. Football always stirred my inner fanatic, brimming with release for pent-up everyday stresses. Perusing game chatter threads later, I stumbled on some serious smack talk slung by another commenter named Randy regarding our Pundonk team. My knee-jerk snark rose effortlessly to clap back good-naturedly about his clear ignorance. But dude doubled down aggressively, so I likewise turned up the heat defending home turf pride. We parried trash talk back and forth for nearly an hour, until he devolved into outright threats over a measly sporting event neither of us actually influenced. I laughed it off, just typical empty chest puffing behind the safety of anonymous screens. Dude didn't scare me across digital distance when our beef centered on powerless spectating anyway. Figured that'd be the last I heard from Crazy Randy once he got bored finding other outlets for his roid rage mood swings. But weirdly, he lurked recent posts and local threads for chances to keep sniping. I mostly ignored attention-starved weirdos baiting while complaining to actual friends about this wacko. Game tickets arrived and I posted another hype pic, not thinking twice how it established our exact upcoming seats for any internet randos. Got distracted with work chaos and didn't peek at vitriolic replies immediately buried under harmless banter my pic generated. So I completely forgotten about Looney Randy's entire existence when game night finally rolled around. My buddy Tom swung by to pick me up for our usual rowdy tailgating tradition plus the extra season tickets he scored. High off our festive ritual firing up team spirit with coolers of brews, neither of us gave a second thought to some random troll's idle threats weeks earlier. We stumbled to our nosebleed seats ready to cheer underdog pride against almost guaranteed defeat. Few plays into the first quarter behind us, still sober enough to track action on the field, loud shouting arose a few rows back. A couple season ticket geezers seemed outraged by obnoxious behavior from some overly aggressive fans. Me and Tom twisted to see what jackass was causing a ruckus, since most folks here tolerated even hopeless losses with resignation. Immediately, I recognized the beefy loudmouth dressed in enemy colors as that whack job from online. Crazy Randy stood red-faced screaming at polite fans, urging him to calm it down. His buddy unsuccessfully tried restraining random Randy from the inevitable ejection soon to follow. Part of me wanted to directly intervene with a dramatic face-to-face showdown over cyber threats. But without acknowledging the weirdo's existence, I simply alerted security guards to another ashhole disturbing folks seated peacefully repping our terrible team. Within minutes, Randy and his embarrassed friend got firmly escorted out by stone-faced guards, indifferent to profanity-laden tantrum from this easily triggered mess looking for any excuse to trash our stand-up fans. Me and Tom exchanged knowing smirks about ditching class clowns unwilling to control themselves in shared public environments. Forget about that attention-seeking poser, and onwards we cheered enthusiastically, if hopelessly, for the next demoralizing interception crunching our home team. I took smug satisfaction reporting back online about random Randy's inevitable humiliation and ejection to universal amusement from our friends. Let that impotent jerk disappear back down his hole, or find some other hobby beyond harassing normal people enjoying community pastimes free from his deep hostilities. Besides the endless game disappointment, no further thoughts of the delusional interloper even crossed my mind for weeks afterwards. Until one crappy sleety night I got jarred from zoning out on Netflix by loud aggressive knocking rattling my apartment door. Annoyed assuming obnoxious drunk neighbors again confused units, I swung open the door ready to redirect staggering fools. But there stood Crazy Randy on my welcome mat looking mean as hell outweighed by 100 olds of pure muscle. My adrenaline spiked immediately from his imposing bulk and familiar threats about making me pay. I watched enough mobster movies to quickly feign ignorance, claiming no clue who this intimidating stranger might be. Clearly he held a vengeful grudge tied to unnamed slights, but no apologies or explanations could satisfy whatever righteousness fueled this brute looking eager to wreck me. When initial excuse rang hollow, I politely asked menacing Randy to leave while sliding a hand slowly toward my cell phone charging on a nearby table. Seeing me recoil sent his temper flaring again about punks like me hiding instead of facing consequences. Fearing imminent violence with each closing step he took into my entry space barely separated from me, I abandoned all brave facades and just punched 911 praying for fast cavalry intervention. Overly amped Randy dared the emergency dispatcher to stop him, when bravado shifted to panicked excuses to hearing sirens approaching from my still-connected line. By the time uniforms rolled up several minutes later that felt endless, Psycho Randy had already bolted from the premises rather than catch criminal charges. But his hollow threats now carried sinister weight after personal invasion left me paranoid about next retaliation when legal wrist slaps might embolden rather than humble this unbalanced bully. Cops mentioned harassment orders and other deterrents, though we both knew protective paper posed a little obstacle if the dude was determined to inflict damage. That chilling run-in murdered my prior impulse to glibly troll hostile strangers online even for dumb sports arguments. Unfunny learnings forged in hindsight that digital words index real-life monsters who might decide demonstrating hard accountability over basically nothing. Maybe we both reacted stupidly at various junctures, but I never saw it kicking down his door based on virtual interactions. Thumbing the volume down on my dashboard stereo, I caught a glimpse of the rental apartment building looming through drooping willow branches, home sweet home from months of backpacking abroad. Exhaustion weighed down my sagging shoulders after the red-eye slog home from Europe, but seeing that 6-story brick facade blanketed me in comfort of familiar community within those walls that housed my cozy studio sanctuary. I had given up social media for my travels, enjoying disconnect from digital tethers binding me to old patterns and people, but reintegration into routine life demanded plugging at least partially back into the virtual hive mind. My jet-lagged brain buzzed with regained access to instant information and communication outlets. After living offline for months, though, hundreds of email newsletters and untouched Facebook notifications felt instantly overwhelming rather than exciting. Muting most of the chatter, I became unexpectedly fixated on one seemingly inconsequential alert, a friend request from some random guy named Drew. No mutual connections or context for why this stranger might want to surveil my digital footprint. Instincts said ignore, but curiosity itched to investigate. Clicking through to a rather barren profile, I gauged Drew to be early 30s from a handful of awkward selfies dominated by forced smiles and rumpled clothes rather than friends or activities. The lack of substance gave him an almost ghostly online presence beyond that random connection request lingering in my notifications tab. Still, I couldn't pinpoint any previous real-world overlap that would organically breed such sudden interest from this specter. I decided simply deleting the odd overture without response represented the best policy for cordially avoiding whatever odd intent existed behind it. Going on with unpacking real life took precedence over questioning quirky social media mysteries. Laundry needed washing, job leads required research, my rental lease awaited signature renewal. But evidence kept creeping back, reminding me of that tangential digital tie, seeking entanglement with my world. Random event invitations started popping up the following week, clustered around nearby venues. Cafes, bars, the gym on my block. I reflexively dismissed each one until the pattern bred of wariness. This stranger clearly tracked my neighborhood haunts, hoping I might accidentally accept and inadvertently grant offline access. Wanting to believe positive intentions bred this clumsy courtship, I tried shaking off the spike of alarm. Perhaps just a lonely guy lacking social graces. Late one night after drinks with friends, the cautious hairs on my neck prickled entering my apartment lobby. The downstairs hall where locked mailboxes lined one wall stayed perpetually dark on its isolated lower level, rarely trafficked by tenants other than dodging down briefly seeking deposited mail and packages. I used my cell phone flashlight rather than fumble for elusive light switches while gathering the small pile of envelopes and flyers in my box. Shielding the bright beam like a flashlight wandering dark woods, I couldn't shake the uneasy sense of unseen eyes tracking me. Safely back in my apartment minutes later with triple lock door bolted, breathing finally eased back to normal cadence. Yet I still wonder about the lingering specter of that friend request somehow tracing my steps through offline spaces. These days, recognition software and location-tagged posts allow virtual vultures to easily circle unassuming prey. But letting paranoia take root felt unreasonable without cause. Still, better safe than sorry kept me continually peeking over my shoulder in shadowy corners. Over the next few weeks, spam increased both virtually and physically in my mailbox. My frequent unsubscribes and filters couldn't keep pace with the barrage spanning health supplements, religious flyers, community college enrollment. Monday brought the biggest flood yet of ads and informational pamphlets wedged tightly inside my cramped mail slot. I wrestled to tug free the stubborn accumulation, including one envelope directly addressed in handwritten Sharpie scrawl that instantly raised my guard. Rather than exciting personalized mail, the envelope contained only a newsletter for a downtown church I had never attended. My address was nowhere in sight, but these days too many unsolicited emails provided ample sources for names and contact information if someone went trawling. I couldn't definitively trace the source nor entirely rule out coordination with my digital stalker. A disconcerting pattern took root, even if only powered by my creeping imagination against the unknown. Later that week, while meeting a friend for dinner, she remarked on my rundown appearance and mental distraction from our conversation. Life felt topsy-turvy since returning from a globe-trotting adventure to this familiar environment grown somehow foreign. As we waited for the check, she half-jokingly questioned whether I needed an intervention before joking about that cult documentary we had recently streamed. We both laughed it off, but the notion sprouted an unsettling hunch now coloring all these tiny ties, seeking to bind me to shadowy forces, who was orchestrating amplified attempts to impose connectivity from just beyond my full sightlines, into what end beyond general unease. I decided to test my stalker theory and abruptly deleted my Facebook account entirely. If algorithms and ads immediately discontinued bombardment, then paranoia would ease knowing cyberspies solely rely on passive digital surveillance. For several days, blessed peace filled both mailbox and inbox. But late one night, a single missive broke the lull. My rarely used landline voicemail box pinged a newly received message from an unavailable caller. I hesitated before entering my PIN, holding my breath instinctively against anticipated horror movie, heavy breathing erupting through the innocent household phone inherited from the previous apartment tenant. Brief seconds of dead air hung weighty before a flat male tone uttered, "I still see you," and abruptly disconnected. No context beyond the obvious message conveying continued unseen eyes upon me despite attempting to break the forces tethering this stranger to my daily movements. I sat motionless, staring at the cheap plastic handset now resting silent again on its base before panic fully detonated through my frayed nervous system. No direct identifiers gave definitive proof this caller matched my digital lurker, but inside I felt sadly certain of their synchronicity. Another lifeless Friday night found me sprawled sideways across the sagging couch, half-heartedly scrolling social feeds, instead of more enticing diversions. My minimal social circle had gradually drifted to acquaintances still orbiting digital spaces rather than grabbing real-world beers or adventures together. But benumbed inertia kept me continually returning to consume personalized content, highlighting the present unfolding always more brightly curated in others' journey snapshots. Until the passive voyeur experience abruptly shattered with a flood of notifications blaring from the phone clenched in my listless grip. Confused what prompted the sudden deluge, I clicked open alerts to find a string of nasty Facebook posts that I inexplicably appeared to have authored tearing down friends and family members with very personalized vitriol. Each post tagged its unwitting victim alongside callous attacks mocking recent life updates or posts they had proudly shared related to jobs, relationships, children. Horrified imagining loved ones' pained reactions, I frantically tried deleting each cruel mockery as rapidly as possible, even while the hateful words kept exponentially multiplying. Some sadistic intruder with clearly compromised my account security settings now wielded my identity as a wrecking ball demolishing treasured connections. Damage control proved hopeless against the constant torrent of unexplained violations cascading to my network. Changing passwords and enabling two-factor authentication stalled the offensive barrage only briefly before a new round of even uglier rhetoric resumed release. Through the fog of panicked embarrassment, puzzled questions and demands for explanation from distressed recipients began piling up in my messaging inbox, as well seeking desperately vigorous denials from me. Reality dawned that some malicious actor had indeed hijacked my digital identity to surgically strike pressure points, calculatingly inflicting turmoil through weaponization of personal data. Scrambling apologies could not combat the emotional havoc purposefully manufactured and distributed broadly by this heartless identity thief, clearly sadistically enjoying hostage power over my helpless witnessing. All pleas to the omnipotent Facebook overlords via help portals and user groups rang impotently, unacknowledged as damages snowballed by the minute. No security assistance intervened despite reporting unauthorized access from unidentified location and devices accessing my account. Meanwhile, the faceless tormentor gleefully impaled more connections through cutting references to my elderly aunt's wattleneck and blackhead sprinkled nose, or tagging my sister's boyfriend with speculation about what diseases he carried. Each new abominable post exponentially compounded waves of embarrassment and frustration. When even deleting the entire Facebook account failed to liberate me from this unrelenting violence against my character, cold sweat drenched me head to toe contemplating the scope of social carnage one anonymous punk could inflict without accountability. These glimpses into unfiltered cruelty festering within strangers needed minimal cracks in cybersecurity fences guarding traces of private information readily transformed into tortured weapons. What perverse personal satisfaction motivated such cruelty for cruelty's sake against random individuals unknown personally to this sociopath puppet master? Some people clearly craved a pantomime of power-bleeding misery by marionette strings. Perhaps this seemingly pointless charade actually camouflaged more targeted motivations, though no clear beneficiary emerged from the general chaos inflicted through my impotent account. Regardless the reasoning, my stress levels rocketed higher by the hour, contemplating potential spilled secrets or lies manufactured appearing under the unimpeachable weight of my familiar profile. Trust inherently placed in the esoteric connections of friends or followers grew painfully conditional when no obstacles prevented hijacking even insignificant work contacts or childhood acquaintances onto malicious joyrides. As the hours ticked by battling this endless siege against my identity, any last shreds of emotional fortitude crumbled to dust. I had placed inherent trust in the esoteric connections of friends and followers, believing those bonds somehow sacred, but technology allowed no obstacles preventing total hijacking of those connections onto malicious joyrides. Childhood confidants, former colleagues, distant relatives, all proved helpless against the faceless intruder wielding my familiar profile as a sadistic weapon. He knew no restraint minding our intertwined secrets and vulnerabilities before leaving them obscenely exposed. The scale of damages erupted far beyond any quick apologies for me smoothing things over. Trust once effortless now hung by a fragile thread, straining from this weight of violations. Exact words we had casually messaged in confidence over the years suddenly trended publicly to maximize shock value, twisting intimacy into vulgar spectacle. As sunrise illuminated just how fully my world lay in shambles, the reality crushed me that this was no ordinary identity theft. Sophisticated hackers had strategically chosen me as their oral proxy to amplify havoc. Outrage rightly focused on a messenger rather than calling out actual invisible culprits, diffusing accountability. Exhaustion smothered any instinct towards self-protection. I had to embrace vulnerability and transparency, first in hopes of begging forgiveness, before trying repeated explication around the high-tech ambush. Preventing feared backlash from further vilifying me soon dominated damage control efforts. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.